Is it possible that Lewis Hamilton, one of the biggest pilots in the history of Formula One, is seeing how his legend goes out just when his most media stage begins in Ferrari? Or is Imola the circuit where you finally connect with the SF-25 and begin your true rebirth? Hamilton arrived in Ferrari not only as a star incorporation but as a declaration of intentions. After a decade of domain ruptures and frustrations with Mercedes, the 7-time champion opted for the most demanding possible challenge: to revive the most iconic team in the history of Formula One and return it to the place that its legacy demands. The union of two automobile giants seemed to promise immediate magic. However, the reality of paddock has shown that the big names do not guarantee immediate results. The transition has been as raw as silent. And now, with 6 already completed races, Hamilton's red dream begins to be tarnished by figures that do not lie and sensations that hurt. The most worrying thing is that, in your own words, it is no longer a lack of motivation or emotional wear. Hamilton does not seem to be facing a voluntary performance decline. On the contrary, it shows frustration because it knows that there is a hidden potential in the car, but feels that something is blocking its ability to extract it. "We have lost performance from China. The car has potential, but we are not exploiting it," he said after the Miami GP. These statements are not an excuse, they are an alarm. They tell us about a pilot who still feels that he can fight at the highest level, but who is trapped in a system that does not understand. Even from outside the paddock, the voices of criticism and analysis multiply. Lucas Di Grassi, former Formula E pilot and usual commentator, was clear to point out that Hamilton is no longer at the peak of his technical capabilities. He mentioned that age, multiple commitments off the track, and the accumulated fortune could have weakened that murderous instinct that characterized it. However, the community still does not give it. A Racing News 365 survey revealed that more than 53% of fans believe that Hamilton will win at least one race in 2025. This is not just nostalgia. It is a sample of faith that still awakens its name. But beyond the numbers, the key is how Hamilton feels inside the car. In Ferrari, the car does not behave as a natural extension of his body, as was the Mercedes in his golden years. The engineers work under pressure, seeking to adapt each component from the suspension to the engine mapping to find that elusive balance that returns confidence to the pilot. Each lap is an essay, each stint an unsolved question. And although there are small indications of improvement as its great performance in China's shot-out sprint, consistency remains its Achilles heel. Therefore, his arrival in Imola is not one more race. It is the first big test after weeks of adjustments, frustrations, and changes. A new European scenario, a technical track, a symbolic house for Ferrari. And also, a dividing line between what has been a disappointing beginning and what could become an epic of redemption. The hardest thing about this start of the season for Hamilton is not the points it has let out, not even the strategic errors of Ferrari or the technical problems of the SF-25. The most complicated thing has been to face a reality for which neither his talent nor his experience seems to be enough, at least for now. The British's frustration is palpable. For several interviews, their body language and your words have made it clear that there is a block, something that prevents you from connecting at all with the car. What in other seasons corrected with a couple of telemetry settings or a conversation with their engineers, now requires weeks of work. There are no immediate solutions. There is no magic that rescues it. And for a pilot accustomed to molding cars in his style, this is a radical change. Hamilton has been brutally honest: something is stopping our performance. A simple phrase that hides a significant emotional load. Frustration not only goes to the car but also to the environment. Ferrari, historically, is a team that loads with the weight of its expectations. Each failed race, each result that does not translate into podiums, is transformed into media pressure, rumors of internal tensions, and inevitable comparisons with its teammate, Charles Leclerc. In this environment, even a worldwide heptacampion may seem vulnerable. But there is another face in this currency, one that many seem to forget. Hamilton has never been oblivious to moments of adversity. His career is marked by impossible comebacks. And it is in that personal story where a spark of hope is born. Because even in this technical and emotional labyrinth, Hamilton has not lowered his arms. The performance he showed in the China sprint classification was a sample of what he can still offer when appropriate conditions are given. There, in a complex circuit without margin for error, Lewis shone. He took a perfect return that put him back to the front, relegating even Max Verstappen to the background. And that moment, however fleeting, reminded us why it is still one of the greats. In addition, the broader context must be considered. Ferrari is about to introduce his first large update package in Imola. More stylized pontoons, modified flat background, adjustments in the aerodynamic balance. Everything points to a more stable and reactive car. And in that scenario, if the improvements work and Hamilton manages to adapt to this new configuration, we could see a turn in its performance. The hopes of the team and the pilot himself are put on that. It is not about winning the race immediately, but about recovering sensations, trust, and above all, competitiveness. For now, the story is in pause. There is uncertainty, yes, but there are also indications, loose pieces of a puzzle that can still be completed. What happens in Imola will be a clear sign. If this frustration continues to accumulate, or if finally Ferrari and Hamilton find the way to a synchrony that until now has been elusive. Hope, although dim, is alive. And in Formula One, that is always enough to keep the game running. Imola, more than one more stop in the Formula One calendar, is a circuit that condenses tradition, pressure, and history. Its technical, narrow, and fluid layout does not forgive mistakes, but offers ideal land for the equipment to test advanced solutions that cannot be deployed in urban paths or with extreme temperatures. And for Lewis Hamilton, Emilia Romagna's Grand Prix 2025 not only represents the return to Europe, it is the turning point. A place where the Ferrari-Hamilton project is played part of its credibility. The moment when winter promises must begin to materialize in tangible results. The Scuderia has marked this event as the starting point for its technical counterattack. After weeks of work in Maranello, the engineers bring a significant package of improvements. Among them, more stylized pontoons and an evolved flat background stand out. These changes are not mere incremental updates. It is a deep redesign in the concept of channeling of the aerodynamic flow of the SF-25. The objective is double: reduce progress resistance and increase stability in medium curve, one of the weak points that has condemned Ferrari in the first races of the year. If this new architecture works, not only could the car performance change, but also the way Hamilton can pilot it, feeling it more natural and predictable. But Imola's challenge goes far beyond technique. In the emotional, this is a circuit that leaves no margin to mediocrity. This is where the pilot separates that simply survives from which it can make a difference. And for Hamilton, that difference is at stake. Since he got out of the car in Miami, suggesting frustration for the loss of performance from China, the expectation of seeing what he can do with an updated car has grown hard. The British knows it. This weekend can define not only the direction of his season, but his authority within the team. Internal level dynamics with Charles Leclerc is also at a tense point. Although both publicly respect themselves, comparisons between their actions are inevitable. In conditions of technical equality, Imola will offer the perfect opportunity to measure who best suits the new package. If Hamilton manages to impose itself clearly, he will win not only points in the table, but also decision power within the development of SF-25. If not, it will be Monegasco who strengthens as the technical referent of the team. And that has direct implications on the development priorities that will be applied from now on. In addition, Imola marks the beginning of the main body of the European calendar, the densest and most definition of the year. After 6 races in transition and sprint format circuits, the season now enters a more stable and representative field of the real performance of each team. This means that strategic errors, adaptation excuses, or short-term limitations lose weight. Here begins the true race for the championships, and Ferrari cannot afford to continue falling in front of McLaren or Mercedes. The pressure is on all fronts. Engineers must succeed with the setup, the strategists must leave behind their past stumbling, and the pilots, especially Hamilton, must transform that accumulated frustration into an action that reaffirms their status as a real contender. And we must not forget that Imola is a Ferrarist land. Running at home, with the breath of the Tifosi, adds a level of emotional intensity that multiplies the consequences of any result. If Ferrari fails here, he will do it before his audience. But if he manages to be reborn, he will do it before his faithful. For Hamilton, this means the opportunity to consolidate his link with the Italian fans, who still observes it with a mixture of skepticism and fascination. A good result would not only reinforce his media figure, but could rekindle a narrative that seemed to have cooled after the Australian GP. Everything is prepared for a decisive weekend. Imola will not only be a test for the car, but an emotional radiography of the moment Ferrari lives. If the new technical package meets what was promised, and if Hamilton manages to recover control of the surrounding story, we could be witnessing the turning point of the whole season. But if not, the feeling of mismatch between pilot, car, and equipment could become irreversible. In this circuit full of history, Lewis Hamilton has the opportunity to rewrite his. And perhaps, finally, start the stage that dreamed so much when signing with the rampant Cavallino. What is at stake at the Emilia Romagna 2025 Grand Prix transcends the result of a single career. For Lewis Hamilton, this is not just another weekend of competition. It is an appointment with its own narrative. A narrative that, for now, has been marked by uncertainty, slow adjustments, constant criticisms, and a sense of disconnection with the technical environment that surrounds it. And yet, it is also an open narrative. It is not sealed. It is not defined. Because if Hamilton has demonstrated throughout his career, it is that, when many begin to doubt him, it is when his response becomes more powerful, more calculated, more transformative. The symbolic weight of this moment is difficult to exaggerate. It is not just that I get to Imola with updates that could redefine the behavior of the SF-25. It's not just that I do it after weeks of frustrating adaptation. It's that he does it knowing that each lap can become a statement. That each track maneuver will be read as a renaissance or decline signal. That each reaction in the box, each radio conversation, each result of Saturday and Sunday can tip the balance towards one or another direction. Because at this point in his career, Hamilton no longer runs just to add points. Runs to reaffirm that he still belongs to the elite vertex, which has not reached Ferrari to withdraw in silence, but to write one last chapter at the height of his legacy. And that legacy is demanding. It is that of a pilot who has rewritten records, who has marked times, who has defeated iconic rivals and has transcended the limits of sport to become a global figure. That level of greatness is not tolerated with gray seasons. It is not supported by technical excuses or endless learning curves. Hamilton knows it, and what happens in Imola will be evaluated under that standard. There is no room for slow learning or to wait for the car to reach its optimal point. Ferrari needs results, and he needs leadership. Because if he does not get it soon, internal decisions will begin to take another tone, hierarchies within the team could reconfigure, and development priorities could move away from their driving style. This is the exact point where stories bifurcate, where frustration can give way to the impulse, where outside noise can become motivation, where a solid action without errors, with rhythm and attitude, could completely rebuild the story that surrounds his figure. Because if Hamilton manages to respond on the track, if he manages to impose his experience on doubt, if he manages to lead from cockpit as he has done so many times, then all of the above criticism, bad results will remain as a prologue of something much more powerful. A return, a rediscovery, a claim, and that is the tension that Imola encloses. That of a circuit that does not offer second opportunities, but can grant first signs. That of a pilot who, despite adversities, has not stopped believing. That of a team that, for more mistakes you have made, still has the tools to redeem. What happens in the next turns will not only change the championship table. It can, if the conditions occur, change the entire course of this story. Because in Formula One, a race is not just a race. It is a movement in motion. And Hamilton, even today, is still one of its most unpredictable, complex, and powerful narrators.